Hilarious.
Well done.
So we are live. We are live. We are live. So. I did everything except hit the go live button. So Arjun's not here. Azim, Sherry, and I have just been having this amazing chat for the last 5 minutes without any of you. Can you guys hear us? Can you guys see us? All of those things. Agastya, yes, Forza Ferrari. Forza Ferrari. We will talk about it. We will talk about it. But right now, we need to know: can you see us? Can you hear us? All of those things. And as long as that is. Oh, they can't hear me. Oh, wait, guys, say something?
Hello, hello,
Oh, okay.
Can you
hello.
hear
Just nobody's
us?
saying anything. Nobody's saying anything. That's what's happening.
Ah, yeah,
That is
okay.
what's
Fair.
happening. Okay, fantastic. All right. Gang is here. Everybody's here. Straight up, I will say, friends, what are thoughts on
Oh,
the Singapore Grand Prix, which starting with, I would usually start with Azim Banatwala, but today is very important
Oh,
podcast debut of Sherzad Shroff's new mic.
yeah, guys.
So
As you
Sherzad
upgrades
just
have
very
Shroff,
been sent.
kindly
updates
sent
have
us
been sent.
beauty.
Please,
So
please,
yeah.
Sherzad Shroff.
So hit that button for likes and send us lots of super chat, all that, because we're bringing upgrades to the podcast today. And yeah, what a race, man. I think this one is definitely the best of the season. And it started out not seeming very promising initially, where everybody was just like chilling, and I was like, okay, is there gonna be masala today or no masala? And then man, was it fun. So yeah, I think the last bit of the race was ridiculously exciting, and I mean, I think we couldn't have asked for a better finish. Overall, to see, Sainz, Lando, Lewis, of course, was a great finish for me, and to see a Maxless podium was just blissful. And yeah, I mean, I would love to talk a little bit about George and Lewis, since I guess there's been a lot of chatter on, Lewis was faster and he should have let him pass, and so on and so forth. But I guess keeping the weekend in mind, overall, definitely George was, had a better weekend overall. So I don't think he was just gonna scooch over and be like, yeah, buddy, tu jaake try kar.
I mean,
And
eventually that's what he did,
that he
but
did, but it was too late for that.
Ja Lewis,
Uh,
जीले अपनी जिंदगी.
but as in, I think there was just a lot of, like, even if the roles were reversed, I don't think like Lewis would have let him pass either. So I mean, in all fairness, I think George had a pretty good weekend overall and was like, the better Merc overall up until that point. But yeah, definitely Lewis was faster, obviously, because they double stacked and he still caught up with George, and he was, much more like competitive and faster. What do you guys think about that whole situation? But I mean, props to Sainz that, like, he won that wholly and solely, with his own strategy, which is way better than we've seen the usual Ferrari strategy. And I think it was really nice to kind of see that Lando Sainz moment of, I guess, everybody knowing what's happening and it all just falling into place, and literally to see the first four cars so tight. I mean, the last few laps.
oh yeah. Like, I mean, for me, even though I had no real horse in the race, but like just those last 6 laps watching it, like I have not felt like as a heart pounding while watching F1 since I would say like probably Abu Dhabi 21 or maybe the first two races of the next season, which was when you had those
Yeah.
Leclerc and Verstappen battles for like I think Abu Dhabi and Bahrain. But that was just nuts, man. I mean, the whole like just props to Science for just how calm he was throughout the entire thing. Like, where just he knew exactly what needed to be done, no information from the team, nothing. He was just like, okay, I know the strengths of this car, I know the strengths of the McLaren, I know the strengths of the Mercedes, and I'm just going to use that. And the beauty for me was that he was so much faster even when Lando was having to defend from Russell, and he's just then just chilling and laying back and recharging his battery, letting him coming to DRS again. It was, I think, tactically, I can't recall a better drive, like defensive drive I've seen in years. Like I think the one like things that stand out is like, for instance, Alonso defending from like prime Michael Schumacher, like at Imola. Like those are the kind of races that spring to mind when you talk about this. So superb drive, just so good. And yeah, finally Ferrari get something. Finally, anybody gets something from this season, which is not Red Bull. But yeah, Mercs, I think Lewis did appear to be faster. I think he somehow always does. Like in the race, Lewis somehow seems to always have more pace in that car than Russell does. But dude, the comedy of that Russell thing is that just purely out of having done Singapore and done races over there, and the amount of times that little jut out in the wall I have hit and spun out is classic. So it was the most like sim racing thing that could happen to George Russell. It was phenomenal. And the fact that Lando hit the wall as well is even better.
Yeah, it's like one clipped, the other fully hit.
Insane.
You know what would have been better is if they didn't bring Russell in and they had only brought Lewis in.
Of course. Yes,
Of
Sherry.
course,
Tell us
yeah.
what else would have been better if the other 19 cars had just not come on the day. Like everyone
No,
else
we
in solidarity
need
with
people
Lance
to
Stroll
compete
had
with.
decided.
Yeah, we need
not.
people to compete with, obviously.
But I think the big blunder that Ferrari did was, why did they not pit Leclerc? It was so easy to
Yeah.
pit him when they had so much gap behind him. Like he had effectively a free pit stop. And I guess that shows why Sainz had to be like, okay, you know what, I will take the strategy into my hands. Tum log ko nahi aata hai.
You answered the
So
question yourself. It's why didn't Ferrari and how did Sainz, right?
yeah.
So the why Ferrari is the why didn't and Sainz is
So
the but how did.
I think Ferrari's like it's very easy to fix. Basically, Sainz needs to be outside the car and in the paddock making the strategy decisions, and whoever is doing the strategy needs to be driving the car. I think that simple swap, like how they do the Red Bull driver swap, it's just that's easy.
You know, I think that may be the single most beautiful mispronunciation I have heard in my life. You said tragedy, which is, I
Strategy.
think, the most accurate description of everything Ferrari has done in
Tragedy.
the last few years. Tragedy. It's beautiful, Azim. Azim, even your typo was useful. That is
This is without even consuming anything in Amsterdam. Superb.
just, I mean, air is only like that. Air is only like that. But yeah, it was excellent, and this is something that we don't do often. We can do it right now. Let's talk about the Red Bulls and get them out of the way before we get to this thing. So they won sandbagging clearly, and this is something that, I mean, when the sort of discussion started over who can they win every race this season, even they for the last sort of 3 to 4 weeks have been saying if we can take Singapore, which means this is obviously something that they have been terrified of from day one. So what was it? What was it that sort of cost them, like from a technical perspective?
I think Aditya actually made a pretty good video. I mean, with his speculations, like he'd made a reel about it as well. But basically, because of how low Red Bull managed to run the car on most tracks, they have a huge advantage because all the downforce comes from how low you can run the track. But because of the surface of Singapore, the nature of the track being so bumpy and you bottom so hard on the track, they had to raise their floor a little bit. Like, and now it felt like, okay, now they're like level with the other cars because that insane engineering advantage that they had is no longer there with them anymore. And you could see like they were really properly struggling. Like even Max was just like, bro, what the fuck is going on? And the fact that Max got out qualified by Liam Lawson in just like that maximum poetry, I think.
That was
After
That
all,
moment was another beauty.
that Q2 moment was just, oh my god. And then Max coming
yeah.
and being all like, oh, well done
Yeah.
after and all.
That's buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in fairness, I think the lap was more to do with the amount of traffic there was and where they put him out in the track. Because I think even in the Q1, he just about made it like to his first run on the final run. And there was that, I think there was a lot of, even Alonso was quite annoyed about this entire they scrapped that one maximum lap time regulation that they have for Singapore, which meant that a lot of people were allowed to drive like very slowly to try and get their tires in the zone and save up battery and all that. So that meant there were a lot of cars randomly scattered all over the place because they can just legally drive much slower than they need to. So I think that was something that caught out Alonso for sure. It caught out Max for sure in the end. But yeah, the pace was just not there in the car this week. And although, having said that, I think the safety cars did not help Red Bull at all. Like this was the week for them where everything did not go their way. Like if they pitted Max, like waited 2 laps later for Max to pit under the VSC, completely changes the perspective. Because again, like you saw, he was 0.3 seconds behind Leclerc, and he would have saved maybe 10 seconds on the pit stop. So potentially there was a chance for him to be up in that battle for the top 5 as well. We'll never know. But yeah, they didn't have the pace today. I still feel if they had not got screwed over by safety car, I still feel Verstappen would have made it to the podium. But I guess we will never know.
I mean, until Singapore next year, where he comes and wins by 14 laps. What do you guys think about this? This was a new configuration of the circuit, right? And what do you think about it? Like, do you think that also made like a huge difference? The fact that, I mean, like it seemed, I mean, it's always been like a this thing track, but it felt even more sort of this.
I think the one thing that it facilitated was doing a one-stop strategy, because so much of the tire deck comes from that, like, heavy braking, left, right, left under the bridge and going. So I suppose that's why generally I think Singapore has always been a two-stop race. It's also been the longest race always, like 2 hours usually each time. So I suppose from a racing POV, it also gave like, another like one sort of semi-overtaking zone, I suppose, at the end of the track. I don't think I saw anybody really going. No, we did see a couple of people going for moves into that chicane, which you would never see before. So I guess it added a little bit more overtaking. I think they wanted to add one more DRS zone also over there, which I think the drivers then had a meeting and then they decided to veto that, because 4 DRS zones is, I think, a bit too much.
That is quick. This thing. Wait, I'll quickly do super chats, and then there's one thing that I'd like to talk about. 3 घंटे सोता रह गया. Dhruv says Sunday evening Asia Cup final और Singapore GP दोनों miss हो गए. Biryani Blast podcast says Carlos always an afterthought for everyone. Glad he proved his mettle in Singapore. He's better than Leclerc at Ferrari in my opinion. Okay, so.
There's also one Navneet Singh who said Liam laying the
law, son. Okay, so do you think, again, because obviously the media has also not had very much to talk about this year. So again, this conversation has started between who is really the number one at Ferrari, and is it really a conversation, or is it just the board media at this point on the basis of these 2 wins for Sainz?
I don't think they really have a number one at this point. I think because they're both fairly, like, you will see one race, one doing better, one race, one doing better. And I don't think that anyone has the legacy with the team like a, Max or a Lewis or whatever, in the sense to be like, oh my God, there's such a huge difference in,
Right.
like number one driver or not. Even if they don't say it, like they don't need to say it, it's just so obvious. But I think with Ferrari, the Ferrari performance in general is so questionable that it's almost like they are only shocked.
Did we lose Sherry?
Oh my God!
Oh my God! The mic has destroyed her. The mic has destroyed her computer like entirely with its this thing. Yeah, sorry for the Zosi. Oh, there you're back. You're back. You're back.
Did you
Welcome
lose
back,
me?
Sherry. We lost you. You were saying.
So yeah, we did. Obviously, it started with Leclerc being, I guess, ahead of Sainz and people pitting him as like the number one driver and so on, and based on performance and everything. But I think now Sainz has pretty much shown that he is kind of at par with him, and I feel like it's pretty much performance based at this point now.
Yeah, I think there was also a lot of I think that it documented that Sainz did like a lot of extra training and stuff, particularly with Singapore in mind. And clearly you can see he's a very like dialed in.
Yeah.
Leclerc also looks like uska thoda give up ho gaya ye season mein. Like for him, he seems like one of those is like if it's not title, it's nothing for me. Like I don't care if I'm not, in that conversation for being the like world drivers champion. Whereas for Sainz, I think he's really like the one who's grown a lot. Like I think every race he's done, like both the races that he's won, he showed like really good racecraft. to come back in. Leclerc generally tends to win more on just pure raw pace. So I think Sainz has shown himself to be a very intelligent driver overall. He understands what's going on, and we've seen that even in races where he hasn't done well. Like he's been the guy who's made the strategy calls. I think we saw it in Monaco as well, where he was the guy who was making the calls of what to do and when to do it. So yeah, I guess there isn't a number one driver at Ferrari at all. But I was reading up, somebody mentioned in the chat about these Helmut Marko comments
Yeah.
Yes,
on
Oh
Checo
yes,
yeah.
Perez.
yes. On
Oh
Checo
yeah.
Perez.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Where
yes.
first he called him South American, which is just classic European white uncle.
Just like basically, I'm just like there should be a rule, okay?
Yeah.
Like if you are from Europe and if you are white and above a certain age, certain comments should just be disregarded and certain questions should not be asked only. Like it's just best that we don't scrape under that surface only. I think there's certain things that we just avoid. If you're over 60 years old
Yeah.
and if you are European
Just
and a
run
white,
along.
just don't ask anything other than car questions, like at all. And
Also, just checking, is Sherry only frozen for me or for everyone?
Am I frozen?
no, you're not frozen. Sherry's not frozen. Sherry seems
Oh,
alright.
okay.
I'm not
She's
frozen.
not frozen. Is she
Oh,
frozen for
okay.
you?
Only for me,
Now
strangely.
also
She's
same.
still frozen.
Yeah.
Now to
Why
I'm
not?
That's amazing. No,
hardcore.
she's fine. She's
I
fine on the
think,
stream.
as
She's
chat is saying,
dancing.
I have to
Yeah.
send internet upgrades
You have to
also.
send internet upgrades also. This is sorry, this is
LAN
Amsterdam
cable.
internet. Amsterdam internet. तेरे इंटरनेट हसीम तेरे इंटरनेट ने ब्राउनी का है
उसका अपलोड ठीक से नहीं हो रहा है.
Your internet is sitting there looking at its hands. Whoa. So even like with this these comment, I mean he's what some 80 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
Leave it. Like there's no reason, literally. All right, it's just basically Red Bull's dad who hangs around.
But it's quite crazy how he got away with it so easily. I mean,
Well, apparently Checo is saying that he had a meeting and he apologized and all of that.
yeah,
So,
but I mean, like for example, when there was this Nelson, he had got a fine and so on and so forth. I mean, at least there was something, and also I think
But Nelson straight up used a slur, right? Like in the
yeah,
sense, he
yeah.
straight up used a slur.
No, but
This was more
also-
like just casual
No,
ignorance.
but also Red Bull didn't like disassociate themselves with it or any of that, which was I think the
They
bigger
put out
issue
a statement. They put out a statement of saying that, you know,
but
we don't.
not at the time. That was the biggest, I think, issue that people had with it. That saying, "Oh, as a team, are you also okay with this? Okay, if a person passes a remark, there should be something in terms of at least from the team saying we don't agree with this or whatever." But I think their excuse or reasoning was that he is not really an employee of Red Bull. He's a consultant or something like that. So why should we put out a statement?
I mean, he's always there. If he's the person who camera is on when he's at podium, then little fair questioning should be done of the incident. Which brings us to, in general, then the other debate that's happened this weekend in terms of penalty application, with even Max for impeding earlier, etc. Do you feel like they were a little light on Red Bull compared to the standard that they usually
yeah, I
establish?
mean, when I saw it, I was like, for sure he has to get a penalty. I have no idea how he escaped
Yeah,
that
yeah.
because it was pretty clear. I think again, it's probably to do with this entire maximum lap time and everybody impeding everyone kind of situation. So they were a bit lenient. But for me, it looked quite like slam dunk penalty.
Yeah, I think it was also because they had such a shit quali that it was almost like, are they already there, like in such a shit space, let them go types. Was kind
but I'm
of,
like, कि already 11th है तो 14th
हाँ,
दे
तो
दो ना.
14 दे दो, right? Like,
yeah,
हाँ.
and it was deserving for sure. I mean, like there were enough people and more that said it's 100% slam dunk penalty, but they didn't like enforce it.
Which
Yeah, I mean, there was pretty much that. I don't know what happened because I don't think they showed a replay on this thing between what happened between Albon and Perez. There was some incident that happened at some point later in the race where you saw basically Albon and Perez had some kind of clash while they were overtaking, and then Albon went down like 5-6 places. I don't know if anyone in chat also can clarify what happened, whose mistake was it, because I think Albon missed out on points because of that pretty much.
it
Or he
is
missed
possible.
out on, like,
Maybe
10th
chat
place.
will clarify that for us. Which also brings us to the other question of the other heartbreak drive of the week, Esteban Ocon. It was all going pretty well, and then it was not. And I think that was heartbreaking because he was actually racing pretty hard.
Yeah.
And then
That was a great battle between
yeah.
him, Alonso, and who was the third? Albon, if I'm not wrong. No.
Was
Who
it
was the
Hamilton
third
at one
driver?
point? Was
No,
it
no,
him?
I don't think that
Oh,
was a Mercedes. It was
Or was
it
it
was Alonso,
Piastri?
Ocon,
No.
and I think
Gasly.
No, not Gasly.
Gasly bhi nahi. It felt like I think maybe it was
Checo.
Perez. Yeah, correct.
Yes.
Hmm. Yeah,
That
that
was
was a very good battle, and in fact, I think like Ocon was like he played it damn smart when I think
yeah.
Alonso was trying to pass Perez because I think Perez had got some kind of damage from that Sonoda incident, so he was slow anyway. But like he played it very smart, like positioned the car very well, got the exit, and I think Alonso, I think you have to talk about like if you
Ooh.
talk about like
Yeah.
Ocon having a good race and then getting fucked, Alonso I think had the most shocking weekend I've seen him have for years. I think since he's been back in F1, and I'm talking about including Alpine, I haven't seen him make so many just driver errors. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
say that chalo got into incident, got damage, whatever, but these are pure basic elementary. Like it's like it's just he gets throwbacks to Singapore being like, "Acha, my car is supposed to crash in this race." So where is
But I
he? Because
think
he didn't have
he's
a teammate that could crash out, na, in this race. So he was like, maybe I am supposed to do it.
no, but
I
I
am.
think he's also just thrown in the towel. Like, like he's done now. He had that great run where he was very excited, but
Well,
in
I mean, he was back on the podium in the race before
yeah,
this.
yeah. But as
So,
in, I mean, like that whole, happy Alonso that we saw for a while has definitely
that's
vanished.
gone. I think there's also more going on behind the scenes
Yeah,
with Stroll
yeah,
particularly
yeah,
Yeah.
because it just like Joe full maximum give up कर लिया है वो लोग ने, like where they were like,
yeah.
we're not bothering repairing the car. Stroll does not want to drive. Like you could see, I mean, it was also very bad impact. That is probably one of the fastest corners like on the entire calendar, and to lose it and go in the wall there is very scary. But yeah, just the fact that they were like, no, we're not even attempting because does Aston correct me if I'm not aware, but does Aston not have like a reserve driver that they could put in if they wanted to really repair that car and do
But
it?
they
But
had to qualify the reserve drivers to qualify. No, that was the issue. So
oh, okay, so they can't
apparently, the
just.
person that does qualifying can race. If you've not, and also I think their reserve hasn't had those many hours in the car, which is why they either do practice or whatever. So when
Oh
Oh, and
yeah,
it's
Hamilton
Drogovic.
Drogovic
was
who's
stepping
there.
in,
Drogovic,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, they had to do practice and then quali and then the race, right? So that's the issue. Like I don't think they have someone with that experience under their belt.
Correct. Huh? I guess, yeah, he couldn't just straight come in without
Yeah,
any practice sessions
yeah.
or anything. Because
Navneet says, yeah, sorry.
But even
sorry.
apparently Liam Lawson, they're saying there was the whole debate, right, at Red Bull in terms of Danny Rick and Lawson and Yuki and what will happen.
Hmm.
Apparently, the rumors that were going around yesterday were that they have decided to keep Danny and Yuki.
Oh, still
Yeah,
considering, but that
and
who knows, that might
and
change.
yeah, and now Lawson is obviously also thinking of other options.
But then, like to go full left field, then what if Lawson is in contention for second Red Bull seat?
Oh,
Yeah,
that
where
that
Helmut
would
Marko is screw all these South American drivers. Get me one South Australasian.
South Australasian. That's
But
I don't
amazing.
know, dude.
you think Perez is definitely done? Like there's no question about it, or are you still like
I mean, I think they'd probably keep him around. Like, it would be need to be an agreement and a conversation that they'll have with him, and where they'll be like, "Listen, bhai, see, you see this season, see your aukat. Realize now that you are number two driver, and you will always be number two driver." It's sort of like how Ferrari had the Rubens Barrichello to Michael Schumacher, where it was very clear that his job is only number two. One or two races, either or he'll win, and he can go and cry on the podium. And Rubens was actually South American, so. But yeah, so I think for him, if he's willing to be like, okay, you know what, I'm getting paid very well, I have the prestige of many constructors championships potentially to come, and I can sit and finish second or third in the championship and enjoy my life. If that, and also considering that he is now 30 plus, it's sort of like he's
Yeah.
got maybe you would
Yeah.
think he's got maybe 3 4 5 max years, and of those 2 3 would be at like a lesser team, you would think. So it depends on what he wants. If he's like, chalo, I'll take the paycheck and just sit and be the second driver, then I guess it's okay, because he's not a as second drivers go, he's pretty decent.
A
He's just not a
second.
championship winning driver.
Fair.
But he's not even, I don't even think he's a great second driver. Like I mean, in terms of, I don't know how much of assistance he's been in terms of as a B driver is what I mean. You know what I'm saying? Like how you had Bottas played a crucial
Bottas was like
role
probably the
in,
best number 2 driver
yeah,
ever.
in like Hamilton winning a lot of championships, and all credit there. Like he was a great second driver. And there were many times that like Lewis won because of that. Whereas I don't see that happening here
Well, I
where,
mean, Checo only really did that once in Abu Dhabi, but
yeah, that's what I mean. Like I'm saying, it's not like he's like, oh my God, yeah, he's been like, B driver of the season for sure.
And sometimes you need that second driver, to win a couple of races just so that your main competitor isn't the one who's winning the race. So
Right.
it also helps that way to reduce the amount of points that the opposition can score. But yeah, it's very rare that Perez shows up. Like, I think at the start of the season, it gave us that impression that, okay, now Perez, street race champion, this, that,
Street
finally
fighter.
showing. Yeah, but then it's just all gone only. I mean, it's very hard to know really the backstory without actually knowing what goes on actually behind the scenes at Red Bull.
Correct.
But yeah, it'll be interesting because Lawson's given a great account of himself. I think he's come in and got up to speed like within 2 races like crazy.
Yeah.
Really, really
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Like,
Yeah. And then you contrast then Yuki Tsunoda, who what maximum give up he did in that first lap. He was like, I have contact,
straight
I'm done.
up.
See you in Japan.
Done.
Bye.
Yeah.
There
I'm
was
catching the
also
flight
a
to
lot
Japan
of,
now only.
chatter on Lando possibly moving to Red Bull.
That would be tasty. Yeah.
That would be tasty. I think that is a because he's definitely not the kind who's gonna just chill in a B spot.
Yeah, but I don't think Red Bull want 2 competitive drivers.
They don't. Yeah.
They don't.
I think with Weber and Vettel, those few seasons were just like such a mess where you had them take out each other so many times that
Yeah.
I
also
think
just like from a dramatic perspective would be very excited to see what Lando and Piastri do together if say this sort of upgrading their car and sort of getting more and more to grips with these regulations next year happen. I genuinely think like what McLaren can do now with Lando and Piastri is quite like tasty, like for at least second place.
Yeah. But on the topic of regulations, so again, there was a lot of this conspiracy going on that ever since with last race, I mean, before this race, they came up with the limit on wing flexing or whatever. And suddenly Red Bull lose pace. So now I think Japan will be like the true test. So Honda's obviously come out and said, listen, we didn't change anything in the car at all. It's just that our car is not made for Singapore. Which has happened before also, no? I mean, we had that Mercedes season also where they won every race and then suddenly Singapore, they came and vanished. So I suppose it's a pretty unique track in that sense. But yeah, Suzuka will be fun. Wait, what are the other teams to talk about?
Well, there's Aston Martin we talked about Stroll and Alonso. We talked about Lando, of course, was quite excellent. What else is there to say? Even though
I think very good defensive drive from him as well. Like he kept putting his car in the right place, despite having the DRS really helped him. But even the places where he was losing the DRS, he was doing sort of just enough. And I think obviously because of how close George was having to follow him, that's what really ate up and chewed up his tires. So Lewis was hanging back for that little while so he could save the tires, and then last 4 laps he could really, really attack. So yeah, it shows over there. Like I think racecraft wise, George still has a little bit lacking, but yeah, Norris, I think very, very consistent. Very generally, when he's in the car, he's not the kind of guy who makes mistakes. Lando, he's one of those as well. Sort of like Lewis, like very rare driver errors. So he has that kind of vibe as well.
But George is also very impatient. I feel like he doesn't as you're saying, more than I think the experience, even like when he's in that zone, he's so in that zone that he tends to like make bad decisions.
But I guess that's
Unfortunately,
also what builds a driver, right? Like at the
yeah,
end of the day, like I feel like this is one of those things that's going to become a very pivotal building block in somebody like Russell's mentality, right? Going forward.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, what is more of a sort of testament to the difference between experience and this thing than the fact that those two mercs are literally going like barely tenths of a second off of each other, and then one guy just slightly bends it, and the other guy who's directly behind him doesn't even flinch, right? Just to
Yeah.
also, while that happens, to not flinch and to not sort of lose out at all,
Yeah.
also in a way a measure of a certain kind of experience. And I feel like, I mean, somebody like Russell will go back and be like, man, you can be on the throttle like 110% for 60 laps and then blink for what, 100th of a second, a 100th, right? And then even that is somehow not acceptable because
and it's such a bizarre crash because generally you would crash on corner exit. Like it is very rare to hit the wall on entry to corner. But that's just weird because that corner just comes out at you out of nowhere. It's a very bizarre.
Yeah, so I think he was just so crazily following Lando, and obviously
just
was
tunnel vision.
Tunnel vision and a nudge outside, and that just obviously.
What's that? This thing called target. This thing something. What is that? Target fixation.
Yeah.
Man got target fixated very, very hard.
Where it was just there was nothing that could save him, and there was also this reel that was doing the rounds, with Lando, Sainz, and Lewis, where one of the reporters asked Lewis, saying, "How does it feel like about 196 podiums?" And one of them said, 196. That's crazy. And then Lewis was like, "You guys haven't even raced in like 196." And Lando's like, "I haven't even done 100."
Yeah.
Like,
but
so,
it was
I mean, that just goes to show the difference in obviously the experience that they've had, right? But even considering that, I think Lando and Sainz are doing a great job.
Yeah, but it's good to see that we finally had a new host to the Max Verstappen podcast.
Guest host.
Guest host, yeah. For 1 week only.
He must have had solid FOMO.
Yeah, nah.
Oh, yeah, fully. I think they should have just called him in just as the host. To be like,
I'm pretty sure he got out of his car, took off his helmet and just started walking towards the podium and be like, sir, nahi, actually, aapko aaj ye side, he must have been like, sorry.
Yeah, and he was also been like, अच्छा, ये साल में क्या है hospitality facilities में देखा नहीं है. Oh, wow, chai machine. Very good, very nice.
Is there anything else specifically to talk about the race, or should we just anything else
I think Alpines, we spoke about. Alfa Romeo autonomous as ever. Haas looked like they had some pace in qualifying. I love how they spoke to Gunter Steiner and asked him what did they do to the car, and he was like, even we don't know.
Magic.
They're just like, okay, we're like Haas is just like that. They show up at the track and they're like, okay, we are fast this weekend. We don't know how.
That's a surprise for us all. And we will just enjoy it
for everyone.
Yeah, but like it just is what it is. Like they're there and they basically provide little Q2 juiciness and then just vanish.
Yeah, they're just there to knock out one or two drivers who you expected to see in Q2. They will do that. That is Hülkenberg's job. One Gasly or one Piastri or somebody he has to hold out from qualifying. And that's it.
Which actually brings us to the only person who's like anywhere close. Like we didn't really have a silly season this year. But the only person whose job is kind of on the ropes, as chat is also pointing out, is possibly Logan Sargent, right? Like
it's just not happening. I think also the last crash, I think was it at Zandvoort, the crash that he had when he was looking very good for points. Went on him. Yeah, I think that really, because you could see just how torn up he was by that. I think that because it looked like the car had pace and everything was going well, but it's very, very. Or was it at Monza? I can't remember now. But it's just not happened for him. I think he will probably be the next guy out.
Also, Piastri and Liam are making him look much worse. I mean, with them performing.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Almost like you're like, why?
You honestly would think that Nick De Vries would probably have done a much better job in that car if they had just stuck around. And I mean, if they had managed to keep him in that seat. It was very sad.
No, I mean,
But yeah,
huh. But yeah, it is.
But
It
so
is.
far, who doesn't have a seat next year other than
I mean, I don't know about. So obviously, both Ferrari
the
drivers
Mercs
are
are both
locked.
locked in.
Red
Uh,
Bulls are both locked. McLarens are both locked. I expect. I get the feeling we won't see Stroll around next season. I think Uska.
he's
I
gonna
think
go into pro
he's.
tennis as
Yeah,
planned.
Yeah,
yeah.
I
Pro
think he's
tennis, pro
done with all
tennis.
this racing
He's
nonsense.
enjoyed it, and now he will go join Latifi on the MBA
He will. Yeah,
program.
he will be. Yeah, Latifi's junior. Latifi usko ragging karega.
Basically, now he sees Stroll at Wimbledon.
Yeah.
Directly. First round exit there also.
Bichara. It just crashes into the wall of the quad.
Poor guy. Very quickly,
Uh,
before we sort of wrap up, Suzuka, how we thinking? How we thinking? Suzuka's looking.
Suzuka, I mean, I'm fully expecting Red Bull to just come back and dominate that one. Also, home race potential to win the. They just have to get 1
Constructors,
point
yeah,
more
yeah.
than
Mm.
Mercedes to win the constructors. And obviously, given the Honda engine and all of that, I think isn't this the last official year of Honda before they make it Red Bull powertrains? Or I never fully understood what that role is
Yeah, even
about
I
the
don't
engine.
understand what this full modern family relationship that they have.
Yeah.
It confuses me also.
Yeah,
But
but yeah, I think Suzuka is just it's such a great track. It's legit like one of those legendary tracks. Let's see what kind of weather we get in Suzuka because Japan tends to be very all over
Right.
the place with like rain and it's sort of like spa-ish in that sense. You never know what kind of weather you're going to get. But it's a track that all the drivers are obviously familiar with. Everybody knows Suzuka, so hopefully even like your rookies, your Lawsons, your sergeants, and all of that won't have too much of a deficit to make up because it's just one of those classic tracks that everyone has been on. But yeah, I am expecting full as a Max Verstappen vengeance drive where he
yeah,
will
yeah, yeah.
lap everybody until fifth place just
Take
to
out
be like,
all his
how
khunnas.
dare you?
Take out all his khunnas in
I will
this,
put you all back in your place.
just
Yeah.
in the ground. Max didn't get the penalty because AlphaTauri didn't show up to the stewards after the quali, apparently. Wow.
Yeah, it's also
That's
quite helpful that when it's your
yeah,
team
yeah,
only
yeah,
who has to make
exactly.
the complaint. Yeah.
Exactly. And do either of you watch MotoGP?
No, I do not, sadly.
I do not either, and the one person who does is not on this podcast today because he's on his way to MotoGP.
His
India,
flight
which
was
is
delayed. He's
happening.
messaged us saying his flight was delayed.
His flight was
That's why-
delayed. Oh, so
that's
he's
why
still
he-
at the
yeah.
airport. Still at the
Oh,
airport.
okay.
Kaushal wants to know thoughts on why it was not pragmatic for Ferrari to stop when Merckx pitted as they only had hards against Merckx mediums.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was the main reason I think why they did not pit Leclerc. I mean, even then, I think it made sense to just keep him on fresher hards, because Mercedes took that gamble in practice where they decided when everybody was doing the medium runs, they went and did soft runs, so that they would have that one extra tire for the race and just for planning for this exact circumstance of having that late safety car worked out very well for them because I think the only option for Ferrari then was to put him on hards or put him on used softs, which either way I think they would have
Yeah.
been screwed. So I still feel putting him on fresh hards would have been a better idea, but yeah, I mean, bichara, abhi it's Leclerc. I don't think he cares too much anymore either.
Before we go, let's go to that last quick super chat. Navneet says, Avi's going to ignore the race with the Sarkari chicane. And Phoenix Abhishek, can we just ask Red Bull not to race a couple of more races? We'll get some great races and hope Russell is no more looking for a gap in the last lap. And yeah, that is, they are sacrificing Leclerc, says Pranav.
Yeah,
Thoughts
fully.
on Brundle, Piastri, Ocon? Oh my god, it was very cute. Piastri tweeted also that hopefully they'll finish the interview. So
Wait,
yeah.
what was this?
So basically, Anil interviewing Piastri
Hmm.
on the grid walk, and at some point, basically Ocon goes past, and Brundle just turns to look at Ocon, and something happens, and he turns back, and Piastri has bounced, okay, like vanished entirely,
Yeah.
just vanished out of nowhere, and so he then sent him a tweet saying maybe we'll finish the interview in Japan. He also, while announcing his contract, said stress-free contract announcement as always. Piastri's contract announcement.
Nice.
Because stress-free contract announcement as always. But yeah, that's about it.
Also, quite interesting to address the poll you had put. So, 59% people think now that Sainz is Ferrari's number one driver.
And let's see now if Leclerc goes ahead of Sainz this time. We will rerun this poll and we will get vastly differing opinions yet again. No match class today because podcast too early for Aditya sir, who will be at work right now.
Yes.
Arjun and Savi's, of course.
I think he should start private tuitions now.
I
For
think
everybody
so.
who's interested, you pay 500 rupees to him and you can
And
attend
you
his
can do it
PT session.
100%. I think that's a great idea. But other than that,
One coaching classes.
F1,
F1.
from A1 to
F1,
F1.
number one. Make your child on podium every time.
like we used to have, what is it? There was that ad that used to come on cable TV for Sharma classes.
Of course.
Yeah.
Butts
It was
F1 classes.
Beautiful irony of having F1 coaching class on BST bus will be hilarious.
Tax. I don't know where the 1% went, guys. I don't know. Maybe YouTube takes 1% of that also. I don't know how it works. But yeah, that's about it. Any announcements, Sherry Shroff, Azim Banatwala, before?
Well, I'm doing a show in Amsterdam this Sunday, so if you're around on the 24th, come. There's like 25 tickets left. And if there's anyone in Oslo, I'm randomly doing one show at a comedy club in Oslo on the 5th of October. It's a place called
Okay.
Latter in
Oh,
Oslo.
okay.
So yeah.
So if you guys have any friends in
Fun.
Oslo, just remember, tell them to go see Azim Banatwala. And make sure you tell them that he's a huge Mercedes fan. So they should definitely
Yes.
take him some Mercedes merch when they go to see him, and just always engage him in the topic of chatting about Mercedes. Sherzad Shroff, any announcements?
No,
Not necessarily for the people of Oslo, but in general.
none.
People around the world. None. Okay. I also have no announcements other than if any of
Yes.
you are.
But also, I would just like to say thank you to everybody who came to the last screening.
Oh yeah.
Because A, it was super fun, and B, from the proceeds of that screening is what we
Yeah.
have
What-
managed to purchase the upgrades
Yes.
for Sherry Shroff with.
Yes.
So
My
thank you.
award.
So all
that-
of you have purchased this microphone for us.
It's the
So thank you.
ultimate super chat in a way. In a way,
Thanks,
it is the ultimate, the superest of all chats. Yeah, I have no announcements other than the fact that if you guys happen to be in Bandra at any point in the next 35 minutes, please come. We have show at Tidal Waves Bookstore, and
Oh, yes.
yeah, also there's a bunch of shows coming up in October, but I will put links that time. And that's about it. With that, before you go, if you can smack the like button one more time. Enjoy the Japanese Grand Prix. We will see you next week. Azim Banatwala from Oslo and the rest of
Yes.
us from wherever we are. Thank you everybody for watching. This has been the Sidepod. This has been very fun. And just remember that if this podcast seems short, it is on purpose.
Yes.